Her stepmother forced her into a marriage until a Korean mafia walked in and stopped the wedding. Celeste used to be the happy daughter of a loving father, until tragedy struck and everything changed. Now, to save the person she loved the most, she'd have to marry into a family that destroyed everything.
Okay, I'll marry him.
This is not your typical love story. This is a story of survival. This is Celeste's story, and you have heard nothing like it. If this story already has you wanting to know more, then you know what to do. Smash that subscribe button right now and hit the notification bell. This story teaches us how you can find family in the strangest places, and how you have to be determined to win. You don't want to miss a single part of this story. Are you ready? Let's go back to the beginning. Celeste grew up with only her father, Solomon. Her mother died while giving birth to her. Celeste grew up with the guilt that she had killed her mother, that her mother would have been alive if she wasn't born. Solomon was devastated to know the thought even existed inside her. He had told her repeatedly that her mother's death was not her fault, that it was one of those things that happened and had nothing to do with Celeste's arrival in the world. He said it with love so plain, it was almost painful to look at directly. She heard him every time, she just could not make it land. What landed instead, in the quiet parts of childhood that adults never see, was the arithmetic. Her mother had been alive. Then Celeste had been born. Then her mother had not been alive. To a child trying to make sense of the world with the tools she had, this was not hard to calculate. She carried the conclusion the way children carry shameful things, not speaking of it, not examining it too closely, just aware of its weight every time someone asked if she had a mother, every time she saw one. Every time Solomon looked at her with that particular love that was equal parts joy and grief. Her mother was from France. Celeste had inherited the face. She never got to meet an extremely beautiful mixture of black and French that stopped strangers before they understood why they were stopping. She would not fully understand this about herself for years. She would feel it first, in the way people looked at her, in the pauses. But the beauty was there from the beginning, waiting. What she understood from the beginning was Solomon. Her father was not a complicated man in the ways that matter most. He loved his daughter the way some people love, without strategy, without condition, without anything held back for safer keeping. He would come home from work and find her wherever she was and simply sit near her, not necessarily talking, just present, as though proximity was its own form of communication. He hummed when he cooked. He was not a good cook, but he always tried, and he hummed through every attempt, the same few songs cycling through, slightly off-key, completely unself-conscious. Celeste used to sit on the kitchen counter and watch him and listen to the humming, and she understood, even without words for it, that this was what safe felt like. Until the business deals arrived. Then everything started to change. First the contracts, then the travel, and then the stretches of her father's absence grew longer each time. Celeste was already finding life difficult without a mother, and now she had to find it without friends too. Before she could plant herself anywhere, before she could learn the layout of a classroom or the name of the street that led to school, Solomon would say they were moving again. She made the beginnings of friendships in half a dozen cities and left every single one before they became anything real. Her childhood was not stable, from one state to another, sometimes from one country to the next. She was alone in the most complete sense, the kind of alone that isn't about the number of people around you, but about whether any of them actually know your name. He gave her everything she wanted and nothing of what she needed. He noticed how she grew quiet and turned inward. He saw it and hated it and couldn't stop it. He was the source of it, and he knew this and still could not find a way to stop, because his job for her was provision, and this was the way he could provide for her. Until he got a posting in South Korea. They moved, and 3 months later, he met Vivian. Vivian was half Korean and half American, beautiful in the way of women who have made their appearance a tool and learned to use it with precision. She had 2 daughters, Nara and Genevieve. Nara was the quiet one, the kind of girl who moved through the world without disturbing it, who listened more than she spoke and felt more than anyone around her suspected. Genevieve was, plainly and without dramatization, the devil's spawn. Vivian had been married before to a Korean billionaire who divorced her for her cruelty and infidelity. Solomon didn't know this. He couldn't have known, because she had shaped the story of that marriage so carefully that anyone who heard it came away feeling deeply sorry for her. She described herself as a woman who had loved with everything she had and been punished for it, and she delivered this in the quiet register of someone who has made peace with great pain. One of the most convincing performances a person can give. Nara had wanted to stay with her father after the divorce. Vivienne had ensured that didn't happen. Every child in her custody was money, and she needed the money to maintain the life she had built, so she fought for both daughters and won. Nara lived for the weekends she spent with her father, the way he listened, the way he was never devious, the way the house felt like a house instead of a performance. Genevieve, on the other hand, endured those weekends. Vivienne lived off the settlement and the monthly payments, attended events that cost more than they should, and wore things that announced wealth she hadn't earned. She had no intention of changing any of this. What she needed was another man to absorb herself into. She spotted Solomon at an event, read him correctly in about 20 minutes, and became exactly what he needed to see. Solomon fell quickly. He was a man who had been alone with his grief for 13 years and had nearly forgotten what it felt like to want someone. Vivienne was intelligent and warm and spoke about her past in a way that made him want to be different from the men who had failed her. He was too decent to suspect that this was being managed. He told Celeste about her with the careful happiness of someone who is not yet sure he has the right to be happy. Celeste was happy too, but not for the reasons Solomon thought. Out of everything he said, she heard one thing. She would not have to keep moving. There would be a home. He would go to work, and she would still be there when he came back. A fixed point, finally. She was excited to meet her new mother. She had never had one before, and she had wanted one privately. For years, in the way she wanted things, she had decided it was safer not to say out loud. She had watched mothers with their daughters and understood in the wordless way children understand things, that there was a kind of ease, a kind of conversation that she had no access to and could not reach with Solomon. She thought, maybe this is the universe returning something. Maybe this is the something she had been owed. The guilt lived in her thought like that as accounting, as debt, as the quiet belief that perhaps if she had not cost her mother her life, she would have had a different childhood altogether. And perhaps now, finally, the ledger was being corrected. When Solomon introduced them, Celeste was met with Genevieve's cold stare and Nara's careful shy look. Vivienne was warm and asked the right questions. Celeste walked home that evening, already imagining telling her everything, having someone in the house who was actually for her. She should have paid attention to what Genevieve's eyes looked like when she was calculating something. Solomon and Vivienne married quickly. He was too busy for a long engagement, and another job was already waiting. He left for Japan almost immediately after. A 5-month deal. He had barely been gone 2 days when Vivienne's face settled into the one she had been keeping behind the other one. There was no cooling period, no gradual change. The woman Solomon had married simply stopped existing inside that house. What replaced her looked at Celeste the way you look at something you've been tolerating and have finally stopped needing to. The house changed when Solomon left. Celeste would not have been able to explain it to anyone, but she felt it in her body the way the air in a room shifts when the thing that was warming it is gone. Vivienne's heels on the marble floors had a particular sound in the mornings, a brisk, efficient rhythm that told Celeste, before she had even opened her eyes fully, what kind of day it was going to be. The kitchen always smelled like Genevieve's perfume, even though Genevieve never cooked. She passed through it, grabbed things, and left without closing anything. The living room was Vivienne's territory, and if Celeste appeared in the doorway while Vivienne was talking to Genevieve, the conversation would adjust, not stop, just shift slightly, as a person shifts their body to block a view they don't want shared. Celeste understood what real loneliness felt like. She would go to talk to Vivienne when Vivienne was talking to Genevieve, and Vivienne would not pause or turn. She would only find small ways to make clear that Celeste's voice was not something she was tracking. If Celeste said something, Vivienne would repeat it back to Genevieve with a particular tilt. Stupid, she would say, like a caption under something that didn't deserve a caption. Genevieve always laughed, every single time. Then there were the tasks. Celeste was asked to clean the table after Genevieve and Nara. She had to do the laundry, not her own, but everyone's. The household help was still employed, but Celeste had quietly become additional staff without anyone formally announcing it. It became an expectation the way cruel things do, through repetition, through the absolute certainty with which it was enforced, and through the complete absence of apology. Genevieve and Nara received pocket money weekly. Celeste received less, inconsistently, and sometimes nothing at all. It was the third day in a row with nothing given to her. Lunch at school was becoming a problem she solved from the cafeteria margins. She walked into the living room where Vivian was talking to Genevieve. She was always talking to Genevieve while Nara was on the sofa watching something with her headphones in. She asked, as calmly as she could, about her money for the week. "You eat my food," Vivian said. She gave Genevieve a specific smile before she turned the smile of a woman who has an audience for what she's about to do and knows it. "You sleep under my roof. What exactly do you need money for? You should be grateful I even let you stay here because of your father. You're ungrateful. If you need money, go and find a job." Genevieve watched with a smile she didn't bother to hide. Nara, from the sofa, pulled one earphone out. Celeste was already crying. Not about the money. She was crying because she had spent years imagining what it would feel like to be loved by a mother, and standing in this room right now, she understood something she had never been able to say before. She didn't need a mother. She needed her mother. Her specific, irreplaceable, gone mother. No one else's mother would ever look at her the way her own mother would have looked at her. Every mother cared for their own. She had lost her own, and the thing she had told herself the universe was returning it wasn't. You couldn't get back what had been taken. The ledger wasn't being corrected. It was just life, continuing to happen without her mother in it. She stood with that truth arriving in her chest, and when she finally spoke, it came out broken. "I thought you loved my father, so why don't you love me? What have I done wrong?" she asked, her voice going thin. "Don't you know how much he loves me? Don't you know that if you love him, you should love who he loves?" Celeste was speaking from a place of pure hurt and pain. "Go and clean the kitchen," Vivian said, turning back to Genevieve. "You're standing there irritating everyone. The little help needs more love," Genevieve said, and laughed, and her mother laughed with her. Celeste walked out. "Let me help you with the kitchen." Celeste stopped. Nara's voice. Nara, who barely spoke. Nara, who had been sitting on that sofa this whole time. "Sit down," Vivian told her. "Or what?" Nara said. "You'll send me to my dad? That's genuinely the one thing I look forward to." She stood and walked to Celeste and took her hand. "Come on, let's go clean the kitchen together. We're both the help in this house." They walked out side by side. The weight of it hit Celeste in the kitchen, the enormous, unexpected weight of someone choosing you in a room that had just finished explaining you weren't worth choosing. She could feel Vivian and Genevieve watching their backs. That was when everything changed between Celeste and Nara. "I'm going to see my dad this weekend," Nara said one afternoon, sitting beside Celeste. "Come with me." "I thought you normally went with Genevieve," Celeste said. "She doesn't want to come. Mum said I don't have to force her." A small pause. "Genuinely, I kind of like that she's not coming, but I'd like it if you did." Celeste looked at her and smiled, a real one, the kind that had become rare in that house, and said yes. She didn't know what she was saying yes to. She thought she was saying yes to a weekend. What she was actually saying yes to was the first time in months that she would be somewhere that wasn't trying to remind her she didn't belong. Nara's father lived in a quiet apartment on the other side of the city. It was not too large, but it was exotic in the way that shows real money, and it had the specific quality of a space where the people inside it were not performing anything. He was a quiet man with an easy manner and a way of asking questions that expected real answers, not the kind of answers people give when they're trying to manage how they're being perceived. He looked at Celeste, and she waited for the thing she always waited for, the slight adjustment, the recalibration, the look that meant she had just been categorized as a problem, and it didn't come. He just looked at her like a person. She started to breathe differently there, slower, all the way down. She had always been looking for a mother. She had not thought to look for a sister. Maybe a sister was also a gift. They went back the next weekend. And the one after. Genevieve never came, and Nara had stopped asking her to. Celeste discovered that a normal house had a specific sound, not the brisk, efficient percussion of Vivian's heels on marble, not the sound of conversations adjusting when she appeared in a doorway, not the silence that followed her everywhere as a kind of commentary. A normal house just sounded like a house. It was a small thing. It was enormous. But for some reason, in Celeste's case, good things didn't last long. Things changed fast when Nara's father won full custody. He came to collect her on a Sunday. Nara had a bag already packed, not because she had known exactly when, but because she had been ready for this and didn't want to waste a single minute of it. She hugged Celeste in the hallway before she left, and it was the kind of hug that tightens before it releases, between two people where one is leaving but not ready for the other to let go. "I'll come back every week. I have to see my mother anyway," I use the opportunity to see you, Nara said. I promise. Go, Celeste said. You've been waiting for this. Go. She watched Nara walk to the car. She stood in the doorway until the street was ordinary again, and there was nothing left to watch. Then she closed the door and turned around, and the house was just the house. Vivian's house, Genevieve's house, and Celeste was alone in it in a way she had not been before, because before there had always been the knowledge that Nara was somewhere on the other side of a wall. The remaining 2 months were hell. Nara came back every week without fail, on the same day and for the same hours, because she had promised, and because she could see what was happening even when Celeste couldn't fully see it herself. Every week, she looked at Celeste and found things getting worse. She was duller, sadder, and slimmer. The clothes that had fit were too big now. By the end, Celeste was basically in rags, not because she had nothing, but because no one cared whether she had anything, and she had stopped having the energy to care herself. Why not come stay with me? Nara asked one afternoon, arriving to find Celeste doing laundry that the household maid could have done, but that Genevieve had pointed at Celeste instead. Come home with me! Your dad didn't invite me, Celeste said. And Vivian would never allow it. Come anyway. I can't. My dad would wonder why I left the house. And you know your mother. She will not tolerate anything that makes her look bad. She was crying now, quietly, the way she cried when she didn't want to make it a scene. I can't, Nara. She missed her dad every single day. Not in general, specifically. The way he listened. The way he always believed her version of things, even when he didn't fully understand them. The way she had been, before all of this, someone's entire world. Genevieve was worse than a villain, because villains at least had a logic you could follow. Genevieve was simply consistent. She left her assignments on Celeste's desk without a word, the way you leave something for someone whose purpose is to handle things. She left the dinner table untidy and walked away, saying nothing until Celeste cleared it. She would shout from upstairs, "Get my laundry done!" in the specific tone of someone who has never had to ask for anything twice. They had a maid who did what she was paid to do, but the particular satisfaction of making Celeste do what the maid could have done, that was not something Genevieve was going to give up. One evening, after Nara had gone home, and the house settled into its specific nighttime cruelty of quiet, Celeste finished the last of Genevieve's laundry, folded it, left it outside Genevieve's door, and walked back to her room to sit on the floor, because the floor required no decision. She looked at her phone. Solomon's name was in her contacts. She had his number memorized. She did not call him. She did not call him because if she heard his voice, she would cry, and if she cried, she would have to explain why, and explaining would make him feel the guilt from wherever he was, and the guilt would eat him up while he worked. She then thought about her mother, the way she sometimes did in the dark. She thought about how everything was her fault, her default setting of blaming herself for her mother's death. If not for her, she wouldn't be sitting on the cold floor alone. Her hand reached for the drawer, she opened it, and found a photograph inside. She and Solomon. Somewhere warm she couldn't place. She couldn't have been older than 6. He was laughing at something she must have said, his whole face in it, the way he laughed when something surprised him into happiness. She was looking up at him like he was something greater than a person. She sat on the edge of the bed and held it with both hands. "I miss you, Daddy," she said quietly. She held the photograph until the room went dark and his face disappeared into the shadow. Then she put it under her pillow and closed her eyes. She didn't cry. She had learned, without anyone teaching her, that some kinds of hurt live too deep for tears. When Solomon came back, he found the ghost of his daughter. She told him everything in private, how she had been maltreated by Vivian and how she had been abused by Genevieve. She told him she didn't need a mother anymore, not one like that. He was devastated. He confronted Vivian. Vivian wept, with tremendous skill. She said Celeste had never accepted her, that she compared her constantly to an impossible ideal, that she refused to help in the house despite being asked politely. And with a particular careful wait, she had begun to worry about Celeste. There were certain off signs about her. She had been watching closely, which was why she had needed to be stricter. Solomon looked at his wife, and then at his daughter, and found himself, the way people in this situation always find themselves, unsure of what was real. Both of them were crying. Both of them were telling him something different. He loved his daughter, and he wanted to believe her, and he also saw Vivian in front of him, and could not easily place her in the role Celeste was describing. What he knew was that his daughter was not okay. He enrolled her in a boarding school in the United States so she could be away from the home she wasn't comfortable in. Vivian smiled through the goodbye and began planning before the car reached the end of the street. Solomon had dared to take Celeste to a school that was more expensive than Genevieve's school in Seoul, and Vivian wanted to ensure she intercepted whatever money he sent for her upkeep. Celeste, on the other hand, tried to settle into the new school. She couldn't. The school was beautiful in the way of places that have been designed to look like they have always been there. Old buildings and wide lawns, and a cafeteria that smelled like institutional food served under high ceilings. The other students had references for each other that Celeste didn't share. They had summers and schools and families in common. They read each other effortlessly. Celeste watched the whole architecture of it from the corner table she had claimed in her first week, and she understood that this was another version of a thing she had done before in half a dozen cities. New school, new distance, new people who had no reason to close the space between themselves and her. She stopped trying to close it. She had learned that wanting in and being kept out was worse than not wanting in at all. The trauma of Vivian's house followed her the way it tends to quietly, in her posture, in the smallness with which she moved through hallways, in the way she had learned to make herself take up less room. She became a less cheery version of herself. The only time anything in her lifted was when Nara's face appeared on her phone screen. Nara, who was very happy at her new school. She always called with the brightness of someone who wants the person they love to know that good things exist. Celeste held on to those calls. It was one of those evenings. She was reading a Korean romance novel that Nara had told her about, insisted on. Really, the way Nara insisted on things she believed in and said she should try it because it had everything. All the drama she was missing. Celeste had told her she couldn't read or speak Korean, and as usual, Nara had told her the perfect time to start learning was now. Besides, Nara had said, "You won't get a Korean Prince Charming speaking only English, you know." Celeste was laughing at how ridiculous it sounded at Nara's voice saying it, the certainty of her voice when she said it when a voice came from behind her. "Aren't you a little too dark for the language you're reading?" The voice came from behind her. She could tell from the tone of it that specific confidence of someone who thinks their humor is clever that he expected her to flinch. She knew what he was trying to do. He probably didn't know he just sounded racist. She looked behind her. He was tall. Beautiful in the way of someone who has never had to work at it, the cold, effortless kind that sits on a person like it was always meant to be exactly there. And he was Korean. She genuinely had not expected that. "Aren't you a little too Asian to be in this part of the world?" she said, and looked back at her book. As if he hadn't just stunned her. He came and sat down in front of her. She felt the shift, the new arrangement of the space, his presence rearranging the air. He had a cold smirk on his face. She caught it in her peripheral vision and refused to look at it directly. He had been watching her for over 2 months. He had not expected her to be feisty. Every time he had seen her move through this school, she had been folded inward, arms close, steps that announced nothing, a girl who barely spoke up for herself. He had walked over, fully expecting to deliver a line into silence and walk away. She had fired straight back without even looking up. A part of him was happy that she was feisty enough to take care of herself. For some reason, he had worried that her shyness was due to her background, but it turned out that she wasn't shy at all. He kept watching her at the table. She kept her eyes on the page, continuing to read or attempting to, because the words had stopped making sense the moment he sat down. She was not Korean, and the text had been difficult before he arrived and was now, with him sitting directly in front of her, watching her, completely impossible. The lines on the page were just shapes. She understood nothing. He watched her, with a smile on his face. She could feel it, the weight of someone finding something to smile about in her direction, and she kept her expression exactly where it was, and her eyes exactly where they were, and turned a page that she had not actually finished. He leaned forward slightly. "At this rate," he said, "you'll finish this book by this time next year." She said nothing. He stood up, said something in fast Korean quiet, to himself, something private, and chuckled at it before he turned and walked away. She waited until she was sure he was gone. Then she pressed her fingertips to her cheek. Her face was burning. She stared at the same paragraph she had been on for 15 minutes, and she could not have told you with any honesty whether what she was feeling was anger, or the fact that she was blushing. That was the beginning of Seo-jun and Celeste. He found her after that in corridors, near the cafeteria, twice outside the library. He had opinions about her clothes that he delivered with a straight face and a precision that stopped just short of cruelty. He noted her hair with the tone of someone making an observation, which somehow made it worse than if he had simply been mean. Every time, she looked at him like she was deciding whether he was worth her energy, concluded he wasn't, and walked away. She always sat in her room afterward with the low warmth of someone who has been seen. She knew this was not the same as being treated well. Though she wondered if his teasing came from a good place, she still couldn't help but blush every time he did it. One evening she saw him in the library, and he looked cold when she was about to pass. He didn't do his usual tease. She registered it without meaning to. She had grown accustomed to bracing slightly whenever she moved through a corridor. He was in the small, involuntary preparation for whatever he was about to say about her clothes or her hair or her presence in whatever space she was occupying. His attention was the only attention she reliably received at this school, and she had learned to hold herself ready for it, even when she resented it. Tonight it didn't come. He was sitting with his hands on the table, and his eyes somewhere above the page in front of him, somewhere the page didn't reach. He looked like someone carrying something he hadn't told anyone about. She was very sure she was going to ignore this annoying stranger and keep walking, but something about his silence made her sit down beside him instead. She knew that particular quiet. She had worn it herself, the specific stillness of someone in a room full of people, completely alone in it. She slid her burger across the table. She had bought it for herself. She didn't know how else to start a conversation. He looked at it. Then he looked up at her slowly. His reaction was blank, not rude, not warm, just open, like a face that had stopped performing something and hadn't decided what to put in its place. "I come here too sometimes," she said, calmly. "To escape? Well, everything. I'm here because I want to enjoy my safe space one last time," he said, and the way he said it looking at her with something she hadn't seen on his face before, something unguarded, made the words heavier than they sounded. "I wasn't even supposed to be here. My family has a plan for me, but I made a deal and all, and now I guess my experiments are over." She didn't fully understand what he was saying. She understood what he meant. "I'm here to escape my family," she said, looking at her books, her hands turning over slowly on the table. "My stepmom and my stepsister are evil. My dad thinks my expectations of what family should be are high, and that's why we can't get along." She said it simply, the way you say things you've had to say to yourself so many times that the pain of them has become familiar. Not performing it, just telling the truth. "It seems like we both don't like our homes. Honestly, my family's plans for me aren't my plans for myself," he said. "I just needed a break from all of it." He said it calmly, like he too had said it to himself many times before. She looked at him calmly. He seemed to be going through more than he was letting on. Neither of them truly understood what the other person was really saying, but they both understood what they meant, what it felt like to not want to go back home. Neither of them said anything for a moment. The library was quiet around them, the quiet of a place where people come to be alone and have ended up being accidentally near each other. She picked up the Korean novel and asked him to teach her, to lighten the mood, to give both of them somewhere to put their hands and their eyes that wasn't the weight of what had just passed between them. He took the book from her. They sat there until the library emptied around them, and the chemistry between them moved through the whole evening like something neither of them was ready to name. That night, walking back to her dorm, Celeste kept catching herself smiling and pressing her lips closed against it. She didn't know his full name. She knew nothing concrete about him. But for the first time in longer than she could honestly measure, she had felt like a person, not a problem, not a ghost, not something the room was better off without. She looked for him at breakfast the next morning. He wasn't there. By afternoon, she had heard his parents had come early in the morning and taken him back to Seoul. She sat by the library window for a while and thought about the weight in his voice when he'd said he was spending time in his safe space one last time. She wondered whether that was why he said what he said, or why he felt like he did yesterday. She moved on with time. It took longer than it should have. Then she got a call from the principal. She went into the office, and he hit her with the worst news. Her father was dead. She heard it, and something in her went very still. "How?" she said, and she was shaking fearfully now, her voice coming out smaller than she intended. "He was not sick." "Your mother said she needed you home for the funeral," the principal continued. Your mother. That word sat with her with the realization that she was now an orphan with the wicked stepmother being referred to as her only parent. She knew she was now in so much trouble. Celeste packed and came home broken. The world seemed to take everything she cared about. Every time she found something to hold on to, the world came back for it. Her mother before she could know her. Her father before she was ready. She had come to this school to get some distance from the pain of Vivian's house, and the world had found a way to bring her back here, taking the one person who had always been categorically, entirely, and without condition on her side. She went back to Seoul and saw that Vivian and Genevieve were not mourning. It was just Nara crying alongside her. Nara, who sat with her through all of it, through the viewing and the service and the long silences in between, because she knew. She knew everything Celeste had been through, and she knew what Solomon had meant to her, and she sat with her the way you sit with someone, when there are no words that are adequate, and you have decided that your presence is what you have to give. The guilt came back at his funeral. It settled over her like something she had been carrying her whole life and had briefly put down and had now picked back up. First her mother, now her father. She was the variable that kept appearing before the losses. She knew, in the place where she kept the thoughts she didn't examine, that this was not how cause and effect worked. But grief doesn't follow logic. It follows feeling. And the feeling was that she was expensive, that the people who loved her paid for it. She stood at her father's grave and thought, there will be no more humming, that specific, off-key cycling of 3 or 4 songs while he tried to cook something gone. She had not known, when she sat on the kitchen counter listening to it as a child, that she was memorizing something she would need later. She had not known that later was coming so soon. At the funeral, there were men she didn't recognize. Korean, older, cold in a way that had nothing to do with the weather. They shook Vivian's hand with the ease of people who had done business together before. They did not look like mourners. They looked like men who had come to confirm something. After the service, Vivian pulled Celeste aside. "I know you're only 16, she said, in the same tone she used for everything calm, already decided. But when you're 18, you will be marrying into this family. A slight gesture toward the men. Celeste looked at her. "No," she said. "I won't marry anyone I don't know. If you're that desperate to give someone away, Genevieve is already 18. She walked out of the room before Vivian could respond. One of the men found Vivian shortly after. "You made a promise," he said. "The girl marries my son, we receive the dowry as payment. Bring us Celeste, or we take one of your daughters instead." Vivian stood very still. She had arranged Solomon's death with these men. She had planned it, they had executed it, and the price was Celeste, her hand in marriage, and, more specifically, her inheritance, which would enter the Kwan family as the groom's dowry and be divided between them and Vivian. She was never going to give her daughters to wicked men like that. Genevieve, on the other hand, had listened to everything and told her mother clearly, "I'm not marrying killers. Figure it out yourself. If you can't get Celeste to marry them, then you'll have to find a way to pay them back, Mum." Then she walked away. The following week, Vivian removed Celeste from her school in New York and enrolled her in the cheapest school she could find in Seoul. Celeste and Genevieve were not even going to the same school at this point because Celeste did not deserve to attend the same school as Vivian's daughter. That was the logic. That was how Vivian said it, without saying it, through every decision she made. The school Solomon had chosen, had been proud of, and had paid for was gone. Vivian's whole plotting started with the will. When Solomon stated that Celeste had the largest inheritance and that the bulk of what he had built would be hers when she turned 18, that was what made Vivian angry. That was what started the plots. She saw that most of what Celeste stood to receive could be hers if she moved quickly enough. So, she made her arrangement with the Kwan family. Marry Celeste off on her 18th birthday, use the inheritance as the groom's dowry, and split the money between themselves and Vivian. Clean. Final. But Celeste was now being stubborn, and Vivian was running out of ways to force her hand. Celeste, on her own end, knew that nothing would make her marry into that family of murderers. She already had her suspicions about who had killed her father. She carried those suspicions the way she carried everything difficult, quietly, without showing them to anyone. While Celeste attended the cheapest school Vivian could find, Genevieve was the queen bee in hers. She was a bully in school and at home. In school, she had found a very quiet little black girl who reminded her of Celeste and targeted her with the satisfaction of someone who had found a familiar target. At home, she turned Celeste into a full-time slave because having a maid was not the same as having Celeste do it, and the difference mattered to her. Celeste was just waiting till she was 18 to leave this house. It was from one task to the other from Genevieve, endless and deliberate, and Genevieve reminded Celeste every single day that she was older and could ask her to do anything she wanted. She said it like a fact. like a law, like something she had been given and intended to use until it was taken from her. A year passed. Genevieve was in her final year when she saw him. She had spotted the quiet black girl she usually bullied near the East Wing, alone, which was the condition she preferred her targets in. She was already moving toward her when the girl did something she hadn't done before. She ran toward a Korean man who had just appeared near the school entrance. And as she ran, she pointed back at Genevieve a clear, deliberate point, the kind that says, "That one, right there." The man looked in Genevieve's direction. Genevieve stopped. He was beautiful in a way that arrived before she could prepare for it. She looked at him, and he looked back at her with an expression she could not fully read, and something about being looked at like that, assessed like that, made her go completely still. She immediately turned away. She turned away and she walked, and she did not look back. "Why are you running like that, you little quiet pest?" Seojin said to his younger sister. "That girl there," Jiyeon said, pointing back once more toward where Genevieve had been. "Ugh, she's a bully. She always bullies me in this school. I'm so happy you came when you did, honestly." That was when Seojin looked in Genevieve's direction with a look that was hard and flat, and said everything it needed to say without a single word. He hated when people bullied his sister. He was the only one in the world allowed to bully his sister. That was not a rule he had announced, it was simply a fact he enforced. "Go inside, Jiyeon," he said. She went. He was the reason she was safe in this school, and she knew it without either of them ever having to say it. Jiyeon was too quiet to protect herself. She had always been this way, gentle in a world that read gentleness as invitation. She was the one thing that made him happy about being a Mafia. Because some people needed someone dangerous in their corner. She was one of those people, and he was glad for her sake to be dangerous. Genevieve walked to class, thinking about his face the entire way. That evening, she couldn't stop talking about him to Vivian. She mentioned his black sister with contempt, glanced at Celeste, said something she didn't need to finish. She told her mother he was everything she wanted, that he seemed wealthy, that she needed a way to get in front of him. Vivian told her to befriend the sister. Get the family name. Come back with information. "You're too beautiful not to get anyone you want," she told her daughter. Her eyes slid to Celeste, who had been standing in the doorway. "And you stop eavesdropping, you have a husband coming. Be ready." Celeste turned and walked away. She was not marrying anyone. She was only counting the days to 18. Genevieve worked the long game with Jiyeon. She was warm where she would normally have been dismissive, attentive where she would normally have been bored. Ji-yoon was wary, but she was also a girl who had been targeted for long enough that someone powerful choosing to be kind was not something she could entirely reject. Before Genevieve graduated, she already had what she needed. The family name was Ryu, the father was Ryu Sung-go, and the heir, the tall, settled, beautiful man at the school entrance was Seojun Ryu. She went straight to her mother. Vivian spent an afternoon researching and came back with her mind made up. "You need to be in front of that man," she told Genevieve, "whatever it takes." A man like that changes everything. She began coaching her daughter with an intention that had nothing leisurely about it. You have everything. Use it. Invitations went out to the Ryu family. The first 5 were ignored. Vivian kept sending. On the 6th, a short response came they would attend. The night of the gala, Celeste was working. Vivian had made certain of this. Waitstaff had been hired, but Celeste had been directed to assist them carrying trays and collecting glasses on her feet from before the guests arrived until after the last one left. Nara had come from college because she had promised, and Nara's promises held. They found each other in the kitchen before the doors opened. "You look exhausted," Nara said. "I'm fine," Celeste said. Nara let it go. "What is my mother saying about you getting married?" "She's been pushing me towards some family," Celeste said, keeping her voice down. "I'm not doing it. I have my whole life ahead of me. I'm almost 18, and then none of this is her business anymore." "Good. Don't let her." Before she could respond, someone came to say the guests were arriving. Celeste picked up her tray. Genevieve was stationed near the entrance in something that had taken significant thought, scanning the arrivals. Jiyeon appeared with an older man, Ryu Sung-ho, Genevieve assumed, and a black woman who would be the wife of Ryu Sung-ho, and probably the mother of Jiyeon. Seojun wasn't visible yet. Genevieve waited, her attention behind her relaxed posture, watching the door. Then it opened. Seojun walked in carelessly, not with the self-consciousness of someone who knows they're being watched, with the quality of someone who genuinely hasn't given the room that much thought. He was 21, and this kind of gathering had been held for him before, and he understood exactly why, and he had come because his father had asked him to, and when he entered the room, adjusted around him, without his prompting. "Mom, that's him," Genevieve said, keeping her voice small. Vivienne's expression opened into something satisfied, and just then, Celeste came through the kitchen door with her tray. She kept her eyes down when she worked. She tracked the room by the direction of hands and the position of empty glasses. She moved through the crowd with the efficiency of someone who has learned to navigate spaces without expecting to be noticed in them. Seo-jun saw her from across the room before she saw him. He saw her and felt something stop in him, the specific recognition of something he hadn't expected to find in this room. He watched her move through the guests and saw her pass near Genevieve's side of the space, saw Genevieve say something to her as she went, saw the specific flatness with which Celeste received it. The knot in his chest tightened. She was a bully at home and outside. He raised his hand for a drink. Celeste wasn't tracking faces. There were too many people, and Vivienne had made certain she was the only one really working. She moved toward the raised hand and stood beside the person with her eyes down and the tray extended. Seo-jun would have liked her to look up and see him. But she didn't. She wasn't interested in the faces of the guest. As he took his glass and she began to turn away, he said, "Aren't you a little too dark for this event you're attending?" She knew the voice before she located it, the cadence, the specific quality of its dry delivery. She raised her face. The tray tipped. The glasses hit the marble floor with a sound that pulled the room's attention in a single clean motion. He bent down beside her, without pausing. "I always thought falling head over heels was a figure of speech," he said, with the tone of someone privately amused. "I've never watched someone do it literally and break everything at the same time." Vivienne and Genevieve were already moving toward them. "Why is she so—" He stood. The sentence stopped. Something in the way he was standing, the unhurried quality of someone who does not experience rooms as spaces he has to earn, made Vivienne go quiet in the way that people accustomed to social power go quiet when they encounter someone immune to it. "It was my fault," he said. Not loudly, not performing, just the flat delivery of someone correcting an error. "If you're looking for someone to blame, I'm right here." He turned and held his hand out to Celeste. She looked at it for a moment. She took it. He signaled his security to handle the mess and walked her a few steps away from the broken glass. "I'm sorry," he said, and meant it without ceremony. Just the words at the right volume directed at the right person. This was the nicest she had ever seen him. She didn't understand why he was only kind to her when someone else was being unkind first. Then he turned to the room, which was watching now, fully, and extended his hand. "Celeste," he said, "dance with me." She almost backed away when she saw Genevieve and Vivienne's faces, but then she found Nara near the kitchen entrance, face completely open, smiling with everything she had. She took his hand. The music changed, slower, as though whoever was at the music had read the room and understood what it needed. Genevieve and Vivienne watched with burning anger and jealousy. "What were the chances I'd meet you here?" Seo-jun whispered in her ear. Celeste kept her eyes away from Genevieve's face from the quality of fury sitting on it. She looked at his shoulder instead. "Why are you dancing with the waitress?" she whispered back. "Except, of course, for the fact that you love the attention." "Do I love the attention?" he said, sounding coy. "Or the waitress?" He knew he didn't love her. Or maybe he did. But she was something to him. And nobody had been something to him since they gave birth to his younger sister. He didn't know what to do with that yet. He was still deciding whether to look at it directly. They were still dancing, the vibe between them becoming somewhat more intimate than it was when they started. "How did you move from the costliest school in America to being a waitress in Seoul?" he asked. "You're kind of strange." That was when his jokes finally hit her close to home. She remembered her life before her dad died, the school he had chosen for her, the way he had said it with quiet pride, a good school, a real school, the kind that meant something. That school was now her before. Everything after her father died was the after, and the after brought her nothing but pain. Tears started streaming down her eyes. "Excuse me," she said, and pulled away from him and walked quickly, and then she was running and she didn't look back. He stood there on the floor where they had been dancing and watched her go. He was shocked and scared. Had he finally said something that actually hurt her? He had said plenty of things to her in corridors and cafeterias, things designed to get a reaction, and she had always met them with that steady look and walked away or talked right back at him. It was their private joke. Was this different? Had he gone overboard? He ran after her. He found her in a corridor off the upper landing, where the gala's noise was reduced to a hum. She was not crying quietly. She was sobbing the way people sob when they have held themselves together for a very long time and have finally found a space where the cost of letting go is lower than the cost of continuing to hold on. "I'm sorry if what I said hurt you. It wasn't supposed to," he said. "I know," she managed. "It's not you. It's just my whole life." She told him everything. Tears fell freely, and her voice cracked as she spoke about the family she was trapped inside, her father dying and taking the last stable thing with him, and how she couldn't wait to leave. He listened with total focus, in a way she had never experienced from someone her age. He just received it all. "We can wait till you're 18 together," he said, and pulled her into a tight hug. She didn't pull away. "You don't have to waste a single tear on them," he said. Then, after a beat, "You look a bit uglier when you cry." She laughed amidst the tears and shoved him hard in the chest. He let her. The laugh that came out of her was real, the first one in longer than she could honestly track, that had started somewhere real instead of somewhere she was performing from. "Celeste," he said, quieter now, looking into her eyes with so much love. "I'm sorry. I never really knew this was your life, and honestly, I just want to watch you conquer it." He pulled back and handed her his card. "Sometimes I go to this place," he said, looking at her with so much care, "where I go to think about everything in my life. If you ever want to think sometime, call me. I'll take you with me." He looked at her for a moment longer. Then, "I think it's time for me to go." "What about the gala?" she asked. "That was literally arranged for you. A gala that has you as the waitress cannot be for me," he said. He walked toward the car, his guards moving ahead to open the door. "I'd rather go somewhere I can imagine you 18 and free." He stopped before he got in. He looked at her one last time. The thoughts in his head and the feelings in his heart were so much he knew he needed to leave this place before they showed on his face. Then he left. Upstairs, at a window, Genevieve had watched the whole conversation. She walked back to her room without a sound. When the guests were gone, she came downstairs and slapped Celeste across the face. "You're jealous," she said. "Bitter and jealous, and you always want what isn't yours." "She's our sister," Nara said from the doorway. "Stay out of this," Vivian told her. She turned to Celeste. "You're 18 in 2 months. Start preparing for your marriage. Since you're old enough to steal what belongs to your senior sister, you're old enough for a husband." "I will never marry that family," Celeste said. Vivian hit her across the face. "You will," she said. "You can hit me," Celeste said, her voice finding the steady place underneath the shaking. "You can take everything my father left me, but no one in this house can make me stand in front of someone and make a vow." She went upstairs. "When she turns 18, Nara said to Vivian directly and without flinching, "she is leaving this house and coming to live with me. This sad thing you both are doing will finally be brought to an end." She picked up her bag and walked out. Genevieve ran upstairs in tears while Vivian stood there, shocked. Some days later, Vivian saw that Celeste was not going to fold. She needed something scarier. The family was already on her neck about everything, calling, pressuring, and reminding her of what she owed them. She was running out of time and moves. She waited until Celeste had gone to school. Genevieve was sitting with her when she made the call. Chairman Kwan came to the house and sat in the living room like a man who had nowhere else he needed to be. "I need you to scare her into this marriage," Vivian said. "She doesn't seem afraid of me." He looked at her for a long moment. "I gave you years to convince your stepdaughter," he said calmly, "and you can't do one thing. If I have to do this myself, I'll collect 70%. 70? Vivian said. "You were supposed to take 40. And you're supposed to be useful to me?" he said. "Right now, you're useless and incompetent, and you can't keep your children in line." He said it as a matter of fact, no heat, no cruelty for its own sake, just the plain delivery of someone who had assessed a situation and found it lacking. "If I do that for you, I take 70. Deal?" Vivian looked at him. At Genevieve's carefully neutral face beside her, at the wall. "Okay," she said. Even though she had just been called incompetent and useless to her face, one evening the man came into Celeste's room and sat by her bed. Celeste was shocked when she saw him there. She immediately composed herself. "I heard that you don't want to marry my son," he said calmly, as though opening a conversation he had already finished in his head. "I don't know your son," Celeste said, irritated. "Your son does not know me. Why should we marry?" You have a sharp tongue, dear, he said. He tilted his head slightly. Do you know who else spoke a lot? Your father. And honestly, I didn't like his sharp mouth. That's why he's no longer here to use it. Celeste looked at him, shocked and afraid. Her suspicions were right. The suspicion she had been carrying since the funeral, looking at it sideways for months, because looking at it directly felt like something she couldn't survive, became a fact in that moment. She felt it settle into her body the way facts settle when they confirm what a part of you has always known. The humming was gone because this man had ended it. He reached into his jacket and placed a photograph on the bed. Nara, taken from a distance. Recent. I need you alive, he said. Her. I'm less particular about. So, if you'd prefer your sister stay the way she is, you know what to do. He stood. You've just turned 18. Before you think about running, remember that I find everyone. He left. Celeste sat on the floor. She had planned to leave tonight. She and Nara had mapped it out across 2 long phone calls when, where, and what to take. That plan was gone. She could not run without Nara, and she could not put Nara in this man's path. This man had just confessed to killing her father. She couldn't risk Nara's life. She sat on the floor while the house went dark around her, and Sol moved outside the window, indifferent and lit. A city that owed her nothing and asked nothing of her, and did not care what had just happened in this room. She thought about her mother. She thought, in the specific, illogical way grief moves, that she had now lost both parents. She thought about how everyone she loved was gone, and now Nara was about to pay for loving her. Not Nara too, she said to herself. Celeste started to cry. She found the card on her bed and remembered when Seojun told her about the place where he thought about his problems. Right now, she really needed it, so she dialed the number. He picked up and heard her crying. He didn't need any more words spoken. I'll be there in 10 minutes, he said. And to her surprise, he was. He took her to a safe haven, and it was very beautiful, the kind of beauty that asks nothing of you, but simply receives you as you are and requires no performance in return. It was a mountaintop that showed the beautiful city of Seoul in its most precious glowing night. She sat inside it and felt the specific relief of being somewhere that was not Vivian's house, that was not the boarding school, that was not a room she had no right to be in. She told him about how she had always suspected her father was killed, and now she had just confirmed it. She told him with the careful voice of someone saying something out loud for the first time, testing whether the words would survive contact with the air. They did. She did not tell him she was going to get married to the family that killed her father so she could save her sister. She could not say that. Not to him. Not tonight. Not here. Not in this place that felt like the last safe thing. They talked at length about everything and nothing, the way 2 people talk when there is something large sitting in the room that neither of them is ready to name. Time passed without either of them marking it. She looked at him. Thanks for waiting till I was free, she said. 4 years since the library. 4 years since the burger she had slid across the table, without knowing how else to begin. She did not say any of that. She just said the words and let them carry the weight of everything they held. She thought about marrying her enemy, about how she had never truly felt loved, not the way she had needed to be loved, not by anyone who was simply unconditionally on her side, except Solomon and Nara. She thought about how everything was going to be worse for her soon, how the door that had been briefly open was closing. She leaned in and kissed him. He pushed away gently in, as if asking her if she was sure about it. I don't want to take advantage of, he was saying when she brought him closer. Shut up and kiss me, please, she said, and kissed him again. This time he kissed her back. She didn't want her first kiss to be with her enemy, and it was really worth it. She cried again while kissing him, because she just understood in the way you understand things that arrive while your body is already telling you the truth that the way she enjoyed his kiss meant that she liked him. And she had to marry someone else. After the best evening of her life, he drove her home. Genevieve was in the hallway and was about to say something that would have obviously been about the marriage, but Celeste was not ready for it. I'll marry him, she said. Vivienne and Genevieve looked at each other, shocked. What could the man have told her? Celeste went upstairs, lay face down on her bed, and cried into her pillow until the pillow was wet and there was nothing left but the flatness on the other side of it. Her phone showed 22 missed calls from Nara. She called her back. Why haven't you been picking up my calls? We had a plan today. My plans have changed, Nara. I'll marry him, she said. No, you're not. You're free now, Nara said immediately. It's my choice. Celeste, it's my choice. She ended the call. The wedding was arranged for 3 days' time. The Kwan family had been ready for months. Vivian was blindsided by how easily Celeste had agreed, that she didn't care to ask why Celeste agreed. One evening, a day before the wedding, Vivian stood there wondering what had finally done it, what had moved that stubborn girl. Celeste had held her position through slaps, threats, and months of pressure. Something had shifted. She reviewed the security footage. While she watched it, she was vibrating with anger. He sat there with her daughter's picture. He had threatened Nara's life. She had thought he'd threatened Celeste, but instead, he had used Nara. Her daughter's life had been placed on the table like a bargaining chip without anyone asking Vivian if that was acceptable. That was why Celeste had agreed. Not because she was scared for herself, because he had threatened Nara. How dare he threaten her daughter? She called him immediately. He came the next evening. "You took your time," Vivian said the moment he walked into her study. "Don't you know the wedding is tomorrow?" he said, unbothered, settling into the chair across from her. "I needed to arrange both sides since I can see you're useless to my cause." What Vivian didn't know was that Nara had come to the house that same evening. She had come to find Celeste to look her in the eye and understand why she had suddenly agreed to something she had sworn she never would. Celeste wasn't answering her calls. Something was wrong and Nara could feel it. She moved through the house looking for her, and as she passed Vivian's study, she heard voices behind the door. She stopped. She listened. "You can't do anything, Vivian," Chairman Kwan was saying. "You'd have to expose both of us, and you honestly can't physically do anything to me." "That's why you threatened to kill my daughter to make Celeste marry your son? Was that the only threat you could think of?" Vivian shouted. Nara brought out her phone immediately and pressed record. "She's my daughter!" Vivian yelled. "Oh, but it was okay to threaten to kill Celeste," he continued calmly, "or to kill her father. If Celeste doesn't marry your son, your daughter will pay for it," he said. "You can't do anything because I have proof of what you told Celeste," Vivian said. "If anything happens to my daughter, you'll rot in jail." "We'll rot in jail," he said, "because if I go down, you'll go down with me." Footsteps moved toward the door. Nara ran. She dashed into Celeste's room and pressed the door shut behind her. She stood there with her phone in her hand and her back against the door. Celeste wasn't home because she was at the Kwan family mansion, getting ready for the wedding tomorrow. She understood everything. Celeste had agreed to marry into that family because of her. She had looked at a photograph of her sister and decided that Nara's life was worth more than her own freedom, making the calculation quietly and alone without telling anyone. Nara's eyes filled. She saw the card on the table. She picked it up and decided that she needed to call him. She dialed the number. Seo Jun, on the other hand, had been confused. Celeste had not taken his calls after that night, and he wasn't sure if he had done something wrong. He had turned it over more than once, the safe haven, the conversation, the kiss she had started, the way she had cried through it. He didn't know what any of it meant, and her not picking up weighed heavily on him. His phone rang. The call was coming to the number he had given only to Celeste. It must be her, he thought. He picked up immediately. "I'm Nara," she said, "Celeste's sister." "I know," he said. "I've heard a lot about—" She didn't let him finish. "There's a wedding in the Kwan family hall," she said calmly. "It's Celeste's wedding." Seo Jun's heart shattered. What did she mean Celeste was getting married? Why was she telling him this? What was she asking him to do with this information? "I need you to crash the wedding," Nara said. "Stall it. I need to do something, just stop it from happening until I get there." "Celeste said she liked you," Seo Jun said. "Why would you want to crash her wedding?" "Because she doesn't like the person she is getting married to," Nara said. "She loves you. And if there's any wedding I'd want to attend in the future, it will be yours." Her voice was picking up pace now, the calm giving way. "She's making a decision under duress. If she marries that family, everything is over. Everything." "Stop that wedding tomorrow, Seo Jun," she said. "I'll be there shortly after." She ended the call. Seo Jun sat there. He was shocked. The kiss, the call, and everything that had happened between that night and this moment sat in his chest at the same time. Was she trying to tell him something? Did Celeste really love him? Well, this wasn't about him anymore. It was about Celeste. With the kind of family she had, he'd not be shocked that they wanted to marry her off. He called his bodyguards. They needed to be ready to crash a 9 o'clock wedding. Morning arrived the way it does when you have not slept all at once, the window turning from dark to gray without any of the transition you usually get. Celeste stood in a room she didn't know, wearing a dress that wasn't hers. It was a cold room, and strangers were dressing her. She kept her eyes away from the mirror because looking at herself in this dress would require a composure she wasn't sure she possessed. Instead, she thought about everything good in her life. Nara's hand taking hers in the kitchen, her father, and the kiss she had shared with Seo-jun. Someone came in to say it was time. She walked out. The hall was full. Chairman Kwon sat in the front row with the composure of a man watching a plan he arranged complete itself. Celeste found her place at the front, beside a man she didn't know and didn't want to know. She kept her eyes on the floor and breathed. The doors at the back of the hall opened. She knew something had changed before she understood what. The quality of the silence shifted, not the formal quiet of ceremony, but the involuntary hush of people responding to a presence they hadn't planned for. The murmur started at the back of the room and moved toward the front like a wave. She turned. He was already halfway down the aisle. He moved the way he always moved, as if the space ahead of him had agreed to accommodate him without being asked. His security behind him, his eyes on her and on nothing else. They had been on her since the doors opened. Something she had sealed away 3 days ago came apart completely. It was not gone. It had never been gone. It had only been somewhere she was trying very hard not to reach. Chairman Kwon rose. "Who are you? Who authorized?" Seo-jun stopped in front of Celeste. He didn't address Kwon. He didn't address the room. He looked only at her. "You don't have to do this," he said. 6 words, quiet enough for only her to hear, certain enough for the entire room to feel. She ran to him. In her wedding dress, she crossed the front of that hall at a run, and he stepped forward and caught her before she arrived, and they were holding each other, and she was crying and kissing him at the same time. And he held her like a man who has decided something and is not reconsidering it. The hall fell into chaos. There were voices and movement. Kwon's son stood abandoned at the altar while Vivian screamed somewhere behind them. Celeste couldn't focus on any of it. She could only feel his arms and the specific relief of being held by someone who had come specifically for her. Genevieve sat completely still. She watched Celeste being held like she was precious. She watched Seo-jun Ryu hold this girl who had washed dishes in their house. This girl Genevieve had slapped across the face in the hallway with the wholeness of a man who knows exactly what he wants and is not performing any part of it. Her face didn't change. But something behind it did. The way things break when they've been carrying too much for too long and finally run out of whatever was holding them. Kwon moved towards Celeste. Seo-jun turned without releasing her. "She's not yours," he said. Flat. Final. She never was. Kwon was taking another step. Then the back doors opened. Nara walked in. She moved across the full length of the hall without looking at Vivienne, Kwon, or anyone else except Celeste. When she reached her, she held out her phone, turned to face the room, and pressed play. Chairman Kwon's voice filled the hall. It was acceptable to arrange what happened to her father. Then Vivienne's voice followed, then his again. Every word from outside the study door, recorded, was now playing back in front of everyone who had come believing they were attending a wedding. The hall went completely still. Kwon moved toward Nara. Seo-jun stepped between them before he had completed a single step. The police arrived in less than 2 minutes. They took Chairman Kwon in the suit he had worn to watch Celeste married. They found Vivian near a side exit she had been trying to leave quietly and had not made it, and arrested her there while she was still explaining that there had been a misunderstanding, that she was the wronged party, that none of this was what it looked like. She was still saying it when the doors closed behind her. The hall emptied slowly. Celeste stood in the middle of the floor in the dress that had never been hers. Seo-jun stayed close, not talking or requiring anything from her. Nara came across the emptying room and wrapped both arms around her. "You're free," Nara said into her shoulder. "It's over. You're finally free." Celeste held on. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Across the hall, Genevieve stood near the doors. The guests had moved past her on their way out. No one stopped. No one said anything. She looked at Celeste in Nara's arms for a moment longer than she had intended to. Then she straightened her dress, picked up her bag, and walked out through a side door into the afternoon. Solomon had always said his daughter was going to have a good life. He had said it the way he said the things he most needed to be true, with a steadiness that was really just love trying to make itself into a guarantee. Celeste enrolled in university 2 months after the wedding that never happened. For the first time in her life, she was somewhere she had chosen, in a program she had applied to herself, in a city she was no longer surviving. She called Nara most days. She sat in coffee shops with her books open and felt, slowly and then suddenly and then continuously, like a person whose life was genuinely, fully her own. She thought about her mother sometimes, but differently than before, with love, not grief. She didn't think about the arithmetic or the accounting of what she had cost. She thought about the face she had never met, and the name she carried, and the fact that she had not made any of it happen. She had been a baby. She had known this for years, but had never been able to make it land. It was landing now, slowly, like something settling after a long fall. The guilt did not disappear. She wasn't sure it ever would, but it loosened enough to breathe around. She and Seo-jun did not rush. They had both grown up in houses where love was either a performance or a weapon, and they had learned separately and then together that the real thing doesn't demand urgency. It simply keeps showing up. He kept showing up. One evening he came to collect her after a long day, and they didn't decide where to go. They ended up parked near a street food stall in a neighborhood neither had been to before, windows down, the city moving around them. He had tateok in a paper bag, and she ate most of it before he had properly offered. He let her because he loved her. "I failed my quiz completely today," she said. "How completely?" "Embarrassingly, completely." "How many questions were there?" "Don't." "I'm trying to understand the scope of the disaster." She threw a piece of tateok at him. He caught it without looking away from her and ate it, and they were both laughing about absolutely nothing the way people laugh, who have been through enough serious things that they have become protective of the easy moments. He looked at her in the streetlight and thought about the library, the burger she had slid across, even after he was a slight bully to her, and the girl who had fired straight back at him without looking up, only to sit beside him an hour later when he went quiet. He had known then, probably. He had simply been too careful to say it. "What?" she said. "Nothing." She looked at him. "Fine," he said. "I was thinking you're the most interesting person I've ever had to work to keep up with." "That is the nicest thing you have ever said to me. Don't make a thing of it." "Can I ask you something?" she asked him. "Yeah. Why did you make it your life's mission to bully me in school?" "Well, you remind me of Ji-yeon. My little sister was always bullied, and I hated it. I liked being the only one to tease her because I knew I was the only one who loved her enough to ensure I didn't really hurt her." "So you love me?" She looked at him, teasing. Finally, she was the one who could tease. "Has there ever been a doubt?" he said, eating his tateok as if the response were obvious. He watched her blush at his response, noticing he was staring at her with a smile. She was mid-sentence when he kissed her, which was how he tended to resolve these situations. She laughed into it, and he pulled back. They finished the tateok and talked until the bag was empty and the night had fully settled over the city. This was what she had come through everything for. Not the grand things. Not the vindication. This the easy weight of a good evening, the comfort of someone beside her who she didn't need to perform for, the sense of a life that was going somewhere she had actually chosen. The news reached Genevieve, the way news about people you've decided not to think about always reaches you sideways through someone else's conversation when your guard has come down enough to receive it. She was at a gathering when someone mentioned his name, Seo-jun Ryu, and his girlfriend, the black French girl. Brilliant, apparently. Everyone who had met her said so. Genevieve's hand closed around her glass. She kept the right expression on and stayed in the conversation for the appropriate amount of time. When she could reasonably excuse herself, she found a corner and stood there with the party noise behind her and the city ahead, giving herself exactly 1 minute to feel everything she had been refusing to feel. Then she straightened. Then she walked back in. Celeste was on campus on a bright afternoon, bag on one shoulder and earphones in, thinking about what to eat fully and unhurriedly in the middle of her own life. She thought about Solomon. She thought about him the way she had started to think about him, with the love, not the grief, with the kitchen. With the humming, slightly off-key, cycling through the same few songs, completely unbothered by the fact that he wasn't doing it well. She thought, "You were right, Daddy. She had a good life. She was already in the middle of it."